Straight
Part 2 of our series, High Income Skills versus High Income Systems. If you did not hear what I talked about in the first part of this series, just go back to the previous episode of this masterclass and make sure you are dialed in so you know exactly where we're coming from, what exactly we're talking about. So nobody is lost here. And even if you didn't listen to the previous episode, you won't be lost, but you will be, what's the word? You'll be malnourished because you're only going to be getting 1/3 of what this series is all about, because it's actually a 3-part series. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. So the next episode will be the other third. But if you missed the first third, you're going to be missing the foundation. So make sure you go and catch the previous episode. So now, picking up where we left off, which is on point number 4. Again, the topic once again is high income skills versus high income systems. Number 4, skills are the engine, systems are the vehicle. Now think about that. Most of you have driven a car before. If you haven't, then you know what you know what a car is. You know how cars work. You generally have the understanding, even if you're not one to crawl under the undercarriage of a car or get up under the hood of a car. I ain't that type of person either. But we all understand the engine is inside of the car, right? So you put an engine inside the car, and the car itself is the thing that actually moves. So what I'm saying here is that skills are your engine. You need to have skills, because if you have a car with no engine, and what you actually have is a toy or a museum piece or a trophy on a mantle, because if it has no engine, the car ain't going anywhere. So those are those things, again, you see in the museum. Systems are the vehicle. When you have the right system and you put the skills, the engine, the skills inside of the right system, that's when you can take off. That's when you can drive from Miami to Los Angeles. I wouldn't recommend that. It's going to take forever unless you're a road trip type of person, but at least you have the capability if you have the system. That's the whole purpose of putting the right skills inside of the right system. So what you all need to understand from this are several things. Number 1 is that a skill and a system are not, they're not competitors. Skills and systems actually work together. Now, you could be independent and you could have one and not have any use of the other. So technically, you could have a high level of skill and be operating with no system whatsoever. You could do that. I don't recommend it, but it can work. And there are people out there who are doing that literally right now. You have a whole bunch of skill. You're not operating with a system. In other words, you just got to keep working, hustling with your skill, which may be very high level skill. The problem is there's no system within it, which means you're continually running on what is essentially a treadmill, no matter what kind of work you're doing. We talked about this in the first part of the series, which is why I told you to go listen to it. And you could operate with just a system and not really have any skill yourself. And if you own that system, you don't have to have the skill. Again, continuing on the metaphor that I talked about in the first episode of this series, if you own the Los Angeles Lakers, you need not have a 40-inch vertical. You don't need to run fast. You don't need to jump high. You don't need to have the ability to make a 3-point jump shot or grab a rebound. But if you own the system that allows the people who can do those things to do it, and you're in charge, you can make a ton of money even though you don't have any other skills. So if you're going to have one or the other, I suggest you own the system rather than the skill, personally. And ideally, you can have both, especially those of you who started your business based on your skill. So you do have to have some skills somewhere within your machine in order to make things work. You either have to have the skill of organizing people. A good example of this is someone like Andrew Carnegie, who knew nothing about the making or the manufacturing of steel, but he owned the largest steel company in the country. They call it U.S. Steel, was one of the first billionaires in the United States of America, one of the richest men ever if you normalize for inflation, because he had the skill of organizing men. His skill was not making steel, even though he was in the steel business technically. He had the skill of organizing men and creating what essentially has come to be known as the mastermind. Andrew Carnegie is one of the first people to do that, getting a bunch of other smart people together and organizing their skill sets so that it could work for his system. Do you understand? So that's a skill you have to have. So the skill doesn't have to be the end user ability. So you don't have to be the basketball player to own the Lakers, but you do have to have the skill of running a big business if you're going to own the Lakers. Because if you don't have that skill, then you're going to destroy the whole business. So you have to have some skill somewhere within the machine to make things work. So if you own, for example, a real estate brokerage, there must be some people in that brokerage somewhere inside the machine who actually know how to sell a house and close a deal and do the paperwork and find buyers and sell it. Somebody got to be able to do that. It doesn't have to be you. Somebody has to have it. And systems are the vehicle that the skills ride in. So if you're a great real estate agent and you know you can sell houses in your sleep, you still need some listings to sell. You still need some clients to work with. And if you had a system that provided those to you instead of you having to go do the legwork and getting them yourself, that might be worth it for you. So you can just focus on what you do best. Maybe, depending on how you want to operate your business. So the system is what creates the listings and provides the clients. And you running a real estate business, we'll just use real estate here because most of you I think can understand this, that if you have the high level skill of selling houses and getting houses sold or helping people buy houses, whichever side you want to be on. I've had some real estate people in Work on Your Game University over the years and some at my events as well, is that the system creates the opportunities for the listings and provides the clients. So if you had a great system that can get you a whole bunch of listings and a whole bunch of clients and you're good at selling, well, that's great for you. Now you can go out there and sell pretty easily. And eventually you might decide, you know what, I don't want to sell anymore. Let me go teach other people how to sell because I know how to do it really well. I can train others on how to do it. This is when you move up in levels of expertise, up the expertise ladder, and now create a system to help them do it. And I'll just make money off everything that they do, which is basically elevating yourself in the business, moving to being the owner rather than an operator within your business. Or as people like to say, working on the business instead of working in the business. So when you're doing that, that's when you're operating based more on system than you are based on skill. When you're in the business, it's about skill. When you're on the business, it's about systems. So the system creates the opportunity for you to use the skill. And again, as I already said, you can have both. In the long run, you get more ROI from focusing on systems than you get from focusing on skills, okay? Because skill requires you to perform. A system does not require you to perform because the system itself is an entity that does the performance. Point number 5, today's topic, once again, we're on part 2 of our ongoing series, high income skills, versus high income systems. Did I say high level at the intro? Should have been high income skills versus high income systems. Point number 5, skills get you started and systems generate wealth. Again, skill is not a bad thing, folks. I made a living. I mean, you could even say that the foundation of where Work on Your Game comes from is the fact that I leveraged my skill as an athlete and then my skill as a marketer and salesperson to get myself started in professional sports and building a career there. That was the foundation of where Work on Your Game came from, because the basketball players who were watching my instructional videos on YouTube back in the day heard about my background and my story, found it interesting, and they started asking me questions about what was it that led me to doing the things that I had done in order to get to the position that I had gotten to. That's when I started talking about, of course, showing them how to practice basketball, which is usually not, for the most of you who are listening to the show, not in your purview. You don't care about how to dribble or shoot a basketball. But it was developing the skill, which is working on your game. It's the mindset necessary to apply it. It is the mental toughness, the discipline, the confidence, the initiative. All of those things were the foundation of what Work on Your Game came from. That was all about skill. It was all about skill. I was playing basketball every day. I was training every day. I was practicing every day, working out every day, publishing content every day. All of those are skills. Those are not systems. That's a skill. Now, in the process, I started to develop systems for how do I create content? How do I come up with ideas? How do I put my stuff out there? How can I take these mindset pieces that I know are good for me and good for others, and how do I organize them into a framework that other people can understand? That became Work on Your Game. That's when I started systematizing. Before I could have explained systematizing, I was systematizing. And so as I've told some of you, if you've listened to this show enough, I naturally think in processes and systems and frameworks. How can I take some idea or some exercise? I don't mean exercise like lifting weights, but in a practice. And how can I make it into a process that I can do over and over and over and over again without having to think about it? In other words, how do I make it duplicatable? I'm always trying to think in that way so I can operate by process. A good example of that is this very show that you're listening to. There's a reason why episodes come out every single day. Not because I'm that much of a genius. I am a genius, not that much of a genius. Is because I have a system for how I come up with ideas, a system for how I record, and a system for how these shows come out. Because of those systems, the show can come out over and over and over again. And there's no one in the world who can do what I've done for the last 10 years, every single day, the way that I've done it at this level of substance. Now, somebody might do a 2-minute episode every day. They couldn't do 20, 30 minutes every day like I have for the last 10 years. And I'm not saying that to impress you. You should already be impressed, but I'm saying it to impress upon you. The reason why I'm able to do that is because of the systems combined with the skill, because I still have to have the skill of actually talking about the shit, whatever I think of. And then I need the systems to actually execute on it when I come up with something. So understand here, we're on point number 5. Skills get you started, systems generate wealth. Do not misconstrue anything I'm saying in this series as to think that skills don't matter or that skills are even diminished. Somebody, somewhere must have a skill if your system is going to make sense. If your system's going to matter, somebody got to have some skills somewhere. Somebody got to come up with something. Because if you have no skill, then what's the purpose of your system? Your system has to be delivering something that people want. Skills usually involve giving people what they want. So someone has to have some skills somewhere. Again, it just doesn't have to be you. And even if you have the skill, it doesn't mean you have to be the one doing it forever. But there has to be some skill somewhere within your system. The more things that can get done, the more things you can get done. Let me back up again. Skills are how you get started in anything, because a skill is a practiced ability. Okay? They are how you get started, because skills are an ability to get something done. And the more things you can get done and the more important those things are, the more money that you make. For example, if you're a surgeon and you're some high level surgeon, I was talking about this yesterday, as a matter of fact, in one of my live streams, not yesterday when you're listening, but yesterday from when I'm recording this. And we were talking about the medical industry, because I was talking about this big Department of Justice fraud that they had allegedly uncovered, and a bunch of people wrapped up in it. And we were talking about how much money doctors make, and then why would a doctor get into a fraud scheme and all these things. And we were looking up how much money doctors earn. Let me see if I can find it, because it was an interesting discussion that we were having. And see if I can find it. I don't know if I'm going to find it. So doctors' income, it was, no, not that. No, I'm not going to find it. Don't worry about it. But anyway, the point was, a high level doctor could be earning $800,000 a year. Even an entry level doctor is earning $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year. That's a skill. And the more important the skill and the more rare the skill, usually the scarcity of something makes the value of it go up, the importance of it go up, because it's so hard to replicate, the more money people are willing to pay for it. And the more valuable the person who has the skill becomes. So this is a very important thing. And you can look out of I can look out of my window, let's see, and I can see a team of people painting the walls of a building across the street. The skill of painting that wall, or at least the skill of showing up and doing the painting, is worth money. And we know it's worth money because those people are probably getting paid, right? They're probably not doing it for free. The system is what allows you to take those skills and put it into a package or an entity of its own that you can make money on, even when you are no longer delivering on the skill. Or the system can put you in a position to deliver on your skill more often and more consistently. And the better you can get at codifying your skill, and the more opportunity you have, over removing yourself from the entire process and still collecting returns. So let me contextualize that for you. So let's just say I go across the street and I see a team of people painting the walls. So I literally do see a team of people painting the walls. Those people are probably getting paid. Why? Because they have the skill of at least showing up. I doubt this is some high level technical ability they have to fucking paint. I could probably do that job too. If I got hired, they could show me one day, here's how you paint. And they probably hand me a brush the first day and say, all right, paint that wall right there. All right, here's the paint the wall. All right, they could probably show me how to do it within one work shift. So it's not a high level technical skill, which means those guys who are painting the wall, they are usually pretty easily replaceable, because the only real skill there is just showing up and doing your fucking job. Now, that might not be as replaceable as we think. Any of you who has ever had staff or had a team of employees, you know how hard it is to find people who can just show up and be a warm body and just do their fucking job. It ain't as easy as it seems. But anyway, we'll assume that they're not there because they have a high level skill of painting. They have a high level skill of showing up. Now, the person who owns that operation, the company that got hired out to do the painting, I doubt whoever that is actually part of the crew who is painting the wall right now. That person is probably not even out there doing any painting, and they're not getting any paint on their clothes or their face or on their jeans during the work shift. What they're doing is they're probably sitting in the office and they're organizing everything, but they're not actually out there doing it. For example, there's a company that I've used for moving. I have moved a lot in the last 10 years. I've probably lived in like 7 to 10 different places. Not because there's really been anything wrong with any of the places that I have lived. It's just I like moving. I like moving to new places. What's the word I would use? I don't know. The way somebody can see food and they just want to eat, even if they already ate, that's how I get when I see a place that I might want to live in, even if it's not far from the place that I already live. I've moved a lot over the last 10 years and basically been in the same neighborhood. And there's a company that I've used for moving every single time for the last 10 years. And I forget the name. Actually, I know the name of the company. But the guy who runs the company, his name is Pedro. And almost every time I've called, either when I call, Pedro will answer the phone. He's the owner of the company. Or I'll get a phone call the day before my scheduled move. And they always call and confirm. Like, hey, we're confirming that tomorrow at 9 o'clock, we're coming to this building and moving to that building. I will either talk to Pedro when I call and place the order to move, or when he calls to confirm that you are moving. But I've talked to him almost every time. And the thing is, I've never personally met Pedro. even though every time I moved, I met the movers, and it's been different movers. Over time, it's evolved. There's been different people. One of their office managers is a female. I've never seen the female because they always send men to come and move the stuff. But I hear from the female who's like the office manager, who she's always on the phone, and then Pedro. I've never met either one of them. And the movers always come and they move all the stuff. And they've always done a good job of moving my stuff. Now, here's the thing. Pedro is the one running the system. See, Pedro's not out there lifting boxes or taking apart bed frames or wrapping up couches to put them inside the truck. He's not doing that, but he controls the system of the guys, and he tells them where to go to move the stuff around, and then Pedro runs the whole system. That's what I mean. So there are skills. I'm sure Pedro has the ability to handle a move if he needed to get his hands dirty, but he's probably graduated out of that, and who knows, maybe he does it. Maybe he's just never been on one of my moves because they have more than one truck. The whole point here is, though, you want to codify your process. So Pedro, many of the buildings I've lived at, the people in the building, especially high-rise buildings, they'll say, well, whoever your mover is, they have to have a certain insurance license, and it's something that they all know what it is. So I remember I was talking to Pedro once, like, yeah, my building said you got to have XYZ license or insurance. And Pedro was like, yeah, we got that. We'll email them. Just tell me the name of the company. We'll email them. We already did this before, so they know who we are. They got it on file. So he already had, that's part of the system. We got to have this license. You got to have this paperwork. You know, you got to back the truck into the loading dock back here, and this is where you can do it. And we got to schedule the time, and then we got to schedule the freight elevator. You can't use the regular elevator because we don't want to scratch up the walls or the glass or any of that stuff. There's a whole system to doing these moves, even though it seems like you just need a couple guys with muscles. No, there's a whole lot more than that. And Pedro and those guys at that moving company, they understand this very well. That's the reason why I've kept using them over and over again, because they always do a good job. One reason they do a good job is not because their men had the biggest muscles to lift couches. It's because they have a system that is reliable, dependable, and consistent. And when something's reliable, dependable, and consistent, you know what people will do? They will keep coming back to it over and over and over again, including myself. Why? Because human beings are creatures of habit. And if you feed the habit that another person has, and a habit can be, we all understand habits can be positive or negative. I mean, a drug dealer can feed a habit, and a moving company can feed a habit as well. So if your company is consistent at helping people get the outcome that they consistently want, and you're not screwing up or dropping a ball, they'll keep coming back to you over and over and over again. So what is that, ladies and gentlemen? If you're listening to what we're talking about here, that is a system for retaining your customers. So Pedro probably knows once every 1 to 2 years, he's going to get a phone call from Dre, like, hey, Pedro, we're moving again. We're moving from here to here. All right, can you send your guys? Yes, we'll send a big truck. We'll send 3 guys. It'll take this much time. Here's how much it costs. It's been the same process over and over and over again. And the reason why we keep using them is because they have a system to make everything work satisfactorily to where I'm happy, like using them, and would even recommend them to anybody else. That anybody ever asked me, hey, you need a moving company in South Florida, who would it be? These are the people I would recommend. They have a system, the guys who have the skill moving the stuff. Pedro and his team are in the office handling the system. You get it? So, point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is we're on part 2 of our ongoing series, high income skills versus high income systems. Number 6, skills feed you and systems free you. So let's just talk about you as an individual person. If you have a skill that is useful and marketable, let me define what marketable means. It means there are people out there who are willing to pay for access to that skill. So you have a skill that people are willing to pay to get it. In other words, just like I just described, if you have big muscles or big enough muscles and you know how to work a pulley and you can lift the couch and you can load it onto a truck and then you can drive somewhere and you can take it off and put it in the new house. If you have that skill and there are people willing to pay for it, you can get a job or you can start a business. All right, you have a skill, people want, they'll pay for it. All right, that gets you started. And it gets you paid. You can make yourself some money by simply using a skill that somebody wants and someone's willing to pay for, and you just put yourself out there in the open market, you get paid. Now, the challenge with only using a skill and not using anything else, this applies to entrepreneurs who are the main skill driver in your business, and employees who are the main income generator in your life, is you having that job and continually using the skill that you've been hired for, is that you can never stop working unless you want to see your money stop coming in. Most people want the money to keep coming in, therefore you would have to keep working. And this is where you get to the proverbial treadmill. First person I ever heard explain this that really opened my eyes was an author and entrepreneur by the name of Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Many of you are familiar with it. Hopefully all of you have read it. I know all of you have heard of it. If you have not read the book, I suggest you go get it. You can probably find the book for free on the internet somewhere, or you can just go buy it. Whatever you do, go read the fucking book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. All of you need to understand it because it tells you a whole lot about how money is made. I don't care how you make your money now or how you want to make it in the future. You need to understand it so you know what is available to you. And Robert Kiyosaki, I heard him say this he was giving some speech about something. This was probably within 5 years of that book coming out. The book came out in the late 90s. And it became the book basically went viral before there was such a thing as going viral. And Robert Kiyosaki was giving a speech at some event. He was probably talking to entrepreneurs. And he was explaining the concept of what I just told you, that if all of your money is based on you working, then it's like you're moving on a treadmill. As long as you keep moving on a treadmill, walking, then the money comes in. If you want to make more money, then you got to go from walking on a treadmill to power walking. You want to make more? Okay, then you got to start jogging. You want to make more? Start running. You want to make more? Start sprinting. And it gets to the point you got a lot of money coming in. The problem is you got to keep sprinting on that treadmill. And there's only so long any human being, no matter how great of a shape you're in, can sprint on a fucking treadmill. Eventually you got to stop running. And when you stop running, what happens? Or if you even slow down, then the money slows down. And the challenge is you want the money to stay up because you've gotten used to that type of money. This is what happens when all of your money is based on a skill set, no matter what the skill is. It's very important you understand that last part. Doesn't matter what the skill is if all your money is based on a skill. Now, why is that true? The reason that's true is because if all your money is based on utilizing a skill, as soon as you stop utilizing that skill, i.e. you go on vacation, i.e. you get sick, you get hurt, you get injured, you get fired from your job, for whatever reason people stop buying in that space, for whatever it is that you're doing, you are no longer making money. So your money has stopped because you stopped running on a treadmill. On the other hand, if you own the system that allows that thing to happen, it's still possible you can run into trouble. Let's just say that there are no basketball games because the basketball players are on strike. Even if you own the system of the LA Lakers, you still ain't making any money, at least not from the Lakers. But if you own the system, it's not so much based on your physical ability to use your muscles and do the thing. So you basically have an extra layer or 10 of protection built in when you own a system and your money comes from a system rather than just having a skill and your money is coming from the use of a skill. You understand? So you're putting yourself on a higher plane, even though technically nothing is guaranteed. Everybody understand where I'm coming from here? This is what it means to own the system rather than own the skill, because the system frees you up. The system frees you to, okay, I own the system. So if nobody's doing anything within the system, that's okay. I can just go use one of my other systems or do something else, or I can go put one of my skills to work in a place that does make money if I really need to, if push comes to shove. But if all your money is based on a skill and there is no market for that skill, what the hell are you going to do? This is what Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, essentially boils down to. What happens in the book, and Kiyosaki explains this better than I will explain it. This is why I told you to read the book. But Robert Kiyosaki's biological father, and this is the guy he's referring to as his poor dad, he was a well-educated man who went to school, gotten good grades, went to college, got a degree. I believe he had an advanced degree, and he worked for the educational system in the state of Hawaii. And once he got to a certain age, he was making so much money because he kept getting promoted. I mean, it wasn't a crazy amount of money, but you know, when you get promoted year after year within a bureaucracy, you keep making money to the point that you're making a good amount more than somebody new who's coming in. And what happened is the organization that was paying him decided, okay, this guy's making too much money compared to the new people. Why don't we just fire this guy and just let somebody else take his job who's at a much lower pay rate, and they're doing the exact same thing. And that's exactly what happened. So Robert Kiyosaki's dad got fired from his job, and because he had spent all of his life only having that one skill, now nobody wanted to pay him because he had been in the industry so long. His salary demands were much higher than someone who was 40 years younger than him. There was no market for his skill. Even though he had one and he had all that experience, there was no market for his skill. So he became poor because he couldn't do anything with the one skill that he had because there was only one place he could use it. Whereas his best friend's father, and this is the rich dad in the story, the rich dad was he had dropped out of school. I believe he dropped out maybe in 8th grade or high school, but he definitely had not gone to college. He was not a quote unquote educated individual. And this person, instead of going and getting a job, he had actually he worked some odd jobs and learned how businesses work. And then he started building his own businesses. And he owned several businesses in the area or town. And as the two men, Robert's best friend's dad, the rich dad, and his real dad, the poor dad, as they both grew in age, they knew of each other, but they had completely different situations. And the situations ended up completely opposite from what we get told in school, which is the well-educated person with the college degree has a much better and brighter future than the dropout who never went to school. Because the dropout who never went to school couldn't move up the ladder that way because he could never get on the ladder because he didn't have the quote-unquote education. he went and started a business. He owned a bunch of systems. So his money was always coming in, even if he wasn't working. Whereas his dad, Robert's real dad, his poor dad, his money only came in if he was working, and only if somebody wanted him to be working. And when the system decided it didn't want him working anymore, he was shit out of luck. So when all of your money is based on a skill, if you really think about it, a system owns you rather than you owning a system. And again, read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just explained it in a way Robert does not say these things in these exact words, what I just explained. But you should still read the book, because that book is one of the foundational pieces of why I'm an entrepreneur to this day. Absolutely. So if you have a job right now, or you've ever had a job, you understand you have a skill to feed you. Right? You get paid for doing whatever that job is. Even if the job is just showing up, like the painters. Again, they're not technicians in painting. They just show up every day. That's why they get paid. A system, on the other hand, frees you from having to continually trade your skills for dollars. That's what a system does. The problem with trading your skill for $1 is that the more dollars you want, the more trade of skill and effort you must give. In other words, you got to run faster on the treadmill. You would like to free yourself from running on the treadmill to where you are earning money without having to give more time and effort to get it, then the system gets you out of the rat race. All right, the good thing about a rat race, or the bad thing about a rat race, is that even if you win, you're still a rat. All right, you're just the fastest rat, and the fastest rat might be the first one to run into the mouth of the cat. Everybody follow my metaphor here. Let's recap today's class, which is part 2 of our ongoing series, high income skills versus high income systems. Number 4, skills are the engine, systems are the vehicle. Engines make vehicles go, but with no vehicle, the engine doesn't matter. You can replace engines in a vehicle. You can't replace vehicles for engines. Technically you could, but just follow my metaphor. Point number 5, skills get you started, systems generate wealth. Skills are how you can start making money. You have a high level skill, you can start a business and just be the only person in the business. Once you put systems in place, now you can get other people involved. You can remove yourself from having to use your own skill and still make money. That's how you create wealth. Wealth means things that people want. One thing most entrepreneurs want, the main reason a lot of entrepreneurs start businesses, is to create freedom, not to give themselves more work to do. But what most entrepreneurs end up doing is more work than they were doing before, because they never get into the systems game. They stay in the skill game. And number 6, skills feed you, systems free you. If you have a high level skill, you can go make yourself some money. All right, that's a good thing about having a high level skill. The issue is you got to keep doing it in order to keep making money until or unless you get involved with or you create a system for yourself which can start making the money for you rather than you having to do it all on your own. Speaking of all of this, inside of Work on Your Game University, as you heard me explain this through yesterday's and today's masterclass, and we got one more coming tomorrow, I help people build systems. I help you understand your system. I help you put a system in place no matter what industry you're in, because the principles of systems are universal. I don't care what industry you work in, what skill you're working with, what background you come from. The principles are universal. I know how to teach them. I know how to explain them. I know how to install them. I know how to make them work. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Choose which path you want to take to work with us. Either way, you're going to be working with me in some capacity. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and let's get to it. Tomorrow, part 3, work on your game. Dre all